Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Code Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation is from Gauri Goreri Mahalla Panjava, and it is as follows. जी जुगत जाके है हाथ, सो सिमरो अनाथ को नाथ, प्रभ चित आए सब दुख जाए, पह सब बिन सह हर के नाय। बिन हर पाओ काहे का मन है, हर बिसरत काहे सुख जान है रहाओ। जिन तारे बहु तरन अगास, जाकी जोत जी प्रगास, जाकी बख्स न मिटे कोय, सिमर सिमर प्रभ निर्भउ होय। आठ पहर सिमरहो प्रभ नाम, अनेक तीर्थ मज्जन स्नान। पार ब्रह्म की सरणी पाहे, कोट कलंक खिन मह मिट जाहे। बेमोहताज पूरा पात साहो, प्रभ सेवक साचा वे साहो। गुर पूरे राखे दे हाथ, नानक पार ब्रह्म समराथ। The theme of this passage, when we examine it, is essentially a cure for our existential fear. How does one get rid of the free-floating anxiety that we all feel, no matter what? And what exactly is this existential fear, Pao, that the Guru is referring to? At bottom, it is nothing more than the fear of death, because that is what is the source of our anxiety, whether we know about it or not. And that's the fundamental thing about life. So the Guru says, Bin har pao, kahe ka manne, har bisrat kahe sukh janne. So he presents it as a question. Why live with fear, he says. Instead, live in awe and reverence for the Har Self. When the Har Self is forgotten, he says, how is happiness even possible? Har bisrat kahe sukh janne. How? It's not possible. That is the way that the context is being provided. And then the Guru says in the first verse, the last pankti here is, Peh sab bin se har ke nae. Here, nae, it signifies hukam. So the first verse reads, Ji jugt jaake hai haath, so simro anath ko nath, prabh chit aaye sab dukh jaye, peh sab bin seh har ke nae. So the literal translation or paraphrase would read, my existential fear, peh sab, sab is all, so collectively my existential fear evaporated, bin seh, when I attuned to the law, hukam, har ke nae. When Prabh wisdom dawned in my mind, that is to say, Prabh chit aaye, then what happened? All sorrow vanished, sab dukh jaye. So therefore, the Guru advises us, recall, remember, and attune to that one. So simro. And then he describes who that so is. Who holds the key to our existence. Ji jugt jaake hai haath. And who protects its creatures, anath ko Nath. So essentially, by recollecting, by remembering, by visualizing, by internalizing self-knowledge, one learns to attune oneself to hukam. And when that happens, existential fear disappears, which is suggesting here that when one attunes to one's real nature, one recognizes that the body with which we are so heavily identified is degradable, that it is in the nature of matter to degrade, and therefore the fear of its degradation dissipates. जिन तारे बहु तरण आगास, जाकी ज्योत जी प्रगास, जाका बक्स न मेटे कोय, सिमर सिमर प्रभ निर्भो होए. Again, the emphasis is on simar simar prab nirbho hoy. Prab is an attribute of wisdom of the self. So the Guru is saying remembrance, simar. So one would wonder, why is this emphasis on remembrance and recollection? Primarily because that is who we truly are, but at the moment we are in a fit of forgetfulness. So if you try and recollect with enough concentration of the mind, gradually, with the help of Gurbani, you will begin to understand yourself to be the substance that creates the body, the essence out of which the body is created. You're not the body, but you're the essence that causes it to happen. And so therefore, and how do you identify with it? You bring it to mind. And the mind then understands its own true nature. It begins to see itself for what it is. Because right now the mind is tied to the ego, so it sees itself through a very constricting consciousness, where it sees itself as the center of the universe and everything else around it as objects. But when it realizes its true nature, then it sees itself as part of a large network. It begins to understand that behind this diversity is one single unity. So recollection, remembrance, simran, smaran is the method in Gurmat to actually touch your own essence. Wisdom, because it is of the nature of wisdom and knowledge. And what the Guru is telling us here in verse 2 is that same knowledge, that same wisdom permeates the entire galaxy. So he's saying, become fearless, nirbho hoye, by recollecting, by cultivating the wisdom or the knowledge of the Prabh self within. Because that wisdom, that knowledge, is actually the support of the entire cosmos, of the planets and the stars. Jinitare bahut taran akas. It is also the animating light within us. Jaki jyot ji pragas. And its charity cannot be erased. Jaki baks na mete koi. So we see here, we need to understand this in terms of knowledge, in terms of consciousness. Consciousness is not just an empty thing. It is replete with knowledge, information, not of the kind that we are accustomed to. And that is what we have to discover. So we are speaking here about different levels of consciousness that we have to traverse, reaching to universal consciousness, which is Ek Oankar, and whose hukam is what we have to identify with. And that happens on a constant basis. So in the third verse, contrasting other methods, The Guru says, Aat pehar simroho prab naam, anek tirth majjan isnan, par brahm ki sarani pahe, कोट कलंक खिन मह mit jaye. So instead of scrubbing the body by bathing at pilgrimages, anek tirth majjan isnan, which is standard practice, the Guru is saying, find the road to transcendence. Par Brahma ki sarani paye. Sarani, oftentimes translated as refuge, shelter, feet, but it also suggests a path, road. So I have chosen to use that because it makes more sense. So what the Guru is saying to us is, instead of scrubbing the body at pilgrimages, bathing at pilgrimages, find the road to transcendence. There is a path. How do you do it? Aat pahar simaro prab naam. By developing constancy in self-awareness through self-knowledge. In other words, become completely self-aware at all times. And that is how the stain of the ego, kot kalank khin mein mit jahe. Kot, thousands of stains, suggesting here that the stain of the ego is a long embedded one. So kot kalank khin mein, in an instant, once you become self-aware, self with a capital S, of your essence, then in an instant, the mistaken identity with the ego just vanishes. And then in the end, Be mohtaj pura pat saha, prab sevak sacha vesaha. Gur pure rakhe de haath, nanak par brahm samrat. When the disciple, and the disciple here is the mind, seeks wisdom with conviction, visaho, with confidence, then the perfect Guru enlightener, lends a supporting hand. In other words, if you do this with conviction, the Guru will actually give you the support and lend you a hand to make sure that you succeed. And that is how Nanak found the transcendent one, which is also the sovereign experience. Nanak par brahm samarat, not wanting for anything, independent. So that is a state of consciousness where there is absolutely no dependency. You're truly free at that moment. So in this passage we see that the Guru has been kind to us to explain to us how to follow the path of Sikhi. Until the next time, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.